And welcome in to yet another episode of the Blitz podcast. Today I'm your host, Mr. Kane Schwartz, and I'm joined by the dude has been grinding through every single episode of these power rankings, and it is Mr. Jaden Kozak. How you doing today, man?
Doing all right, doing all right. Just finished recording our fifth ranked mystery team, which I can't say, but just finished that episode up. Was a good one. Hopefully this will be a good one as well. And this is number 6. After this, we're into the top 5, and we've only got a couple teams left to go.
I know it's sad stuff as we're coming towards the end here, but as I've been saying this whole segment, once we're down to the last team, that means football is right upon us. So super hyped for that. But we're covering the 6th ranked team in our power rankings today before we head into the top 5. And it's a team that was basically locking in top 5 for the past 2 years prior to this, at least.
Our number 1 team last year.
Yeah, for sure. And they see a little bit of decline this year after their kind of disappointing performance in the playoffs last year. I mean, all that I could think about when I was putting together the Bills rankings, and for me personally, was Stephon Diggs in the snow looking at Josh Allen on the sidelines with his hands up, and Josh Allen just looking down with his head down, not even looking up. Like, that's the whole time that was going through my head when these rankings came about. And that's why we got them at 6. So not as prolific as they had been in the past few years, but it still is the Buffalo Bills, and that's why we've got them in the top 10. So let's start diving into it. And as always, got to start out with the quarterback position. And there's no doubting that Josh Allen is one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League that we have today. I mean, he's going to be one of the quarterbacks that we look back in 10, 15 years. And it'll be one of the quarterbacks of our generation that we watched and we saw, and it's one of the greatest quarterbacks of our time. But, I mean, there's definitely some critiques to be made. I mean, he was disappointing in the playoffs. I don't know, man. He's not Patrick Mahomes, and that's really kind of all you have to say at this point. But got him coming in at 3rd in the quarterback rankings. Still pretty high. But what's your argument against Josh Allen? Everybody, you can sit here and talk great things about Josh Allen. If he went out and won an MVP this year, nobody would be surprised. But what's the case against him?
The whole point is we're supposed to be optimistic, and you lead with, what do you not like about Josh Allen?
Okay, all right, that's fair. Okay, that's fair. I'm not saying, I was plenty optimistic. I gave all the great things that I just said all these great things about Josh Allen. I'm just saying. Everybody can go on and talk about Josh Allen for days. But what's one thing that you're thinking about that might hold him back this year? I don't know. And then you can glow upon him. Go ahead.
So, and this has been kind of a thing for the last 3 years since he took that big step. I mean, 2019 to 2020 was one of the biggest step-ups we've seen from a quarterback in a very, very long time. But some of the things that plagued him through the first 2 years have definitely stayed for, it can be just for a few snaps a game, or a few plays a game, a few throws a game. Sometimes it can be even longer than that. Sometimes it's even less than that. But he will have a couple throws a game where you just are like, what the hell was that? Like, you're pretty confused about what's going on, what's going through his head when he makes some of those decisions. And that was kind of his thing for the first few years, where it felt like every other pass was one of those. But he really cleaned that up into the 2020 season, fixed that problem, and really has been a superhero of a quarterback since then. I mean, we talk about Patrick Mahomes as one of the best guys in the NFL. I think Josh Allen, when he's on, I mean, there's definitely 3 or 4 guys that you can make this argument with. When he's on, he's right there with Burrow, with Mahomes. He's in front of Herbert, but in that cluster,
he could even be in a tier by himself. I know I just said what I said about Patrick Mahomes, but if Josh Allen, I don't know, Patrick Mahomes takes a step back, a slight step back these next few years, Josh Allen rockets forward. I mean, he's easily the best quarterback.
And we saw that. It kind of feels like a lot of the seasons jumbled together, but middle of last year, even early parts of this year, the take was Josh Allen's the best quarterback in the NFL. He's jumped Patrick Mahomes, and Joe Burrow made his argument as well and staked his claim in that conversation. But I think any of those 3 guys, you cannot go wrong really making an argument that they're the best quarterback in the NFL. I think all of them have their own arguments. Josh Allen is like your ultimate, like, create a player, like Madden style. He's your guy. He's probably the guy that I'm least worried about getting hurt in the NFL among all quarterbacks. He played through a strained UCL last year, which would sideline a lot of guys, played through it and played, still pretty good football down the stretch. I mean, there was a slight decline in play. I'm looking at his grades through the first half of the season. He had 488 or better grades in the first 6 weeks, which is pretty crazy. Only had 2 throughout the rest of the season, but still was playing. He ultimately graded out at a 91.6. That's top 2 or 3, I'm fairly certain, among quarterbacks. Like, you're not going to get much better than Josh Allen, even if he's, nursing an injury. Like, there's a reason why and we'll talk about this in a little bit, there's a reason why they haven't really built this offensive lineup as much as maybe some people want them to, is because they don't need to. Like, yeah. Josh Allen can take hits just as well as anybody. He's like Big Ben, but if he was like with rocket shoes.
I don't want to I didn't want to throw out that comparison because when you look at them, they're two very different quarterbacks and how they play. But as far as size and getting hit and being able to take it, I mean, everybody's seen that graphic of Big Ben, and it's all the injuries over his entire career. And it's it plots it out all over his body. And he didn't. The amount of injuries he had, he should have missed a ton more games. But he didn't because of his size and how tough he was. And Josh Allen has a lot of the same things. I agree.
Yeah, but like I said, when he's on, he has arguably the strongest arm in the NFL, has top 5 arm talent. And that's arm strength plus being able to make those tight throws and stuff like that. Top 5 arm talent. And he's got, I would say, at least top 8 mobility in the NFL. I mean, he's not the pure rusher that a Lamar Jackson, a Justin Fields, who knows, maybe an Anthony Richardson guy like that is. But as far as
I mean, he's probably the next purest rusher.
Yeah, I was about to say him, and then Jalen Hurts. After that, I'd say it's probably Josh Allen. As far as just because when he's running, it feels like he doesn't he doesn't slide, he doesn't run out of bounds. And that's got to be scary for Bills fans at times. But the thing is, he's, built to take those hits. That's what Josh Allen's here for. That's one of his biggest assets, is that he doesn't have to slide. He doesn't have to run out of bounds. He can take these hits. Ultimately, it does. I can't remember what the strained UCL play was on, but that could have been a lot worse. A knee injury to Josh Allen more severe than that would have ended their season effectively and brought a lot more doubt into this year. But like I've said probably 6 times in the last 5 minutes, when he's on, he's one of the 2 to 3 best quarterbacks in the NFL. And even when he's not, we still have him at 3rd.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not trying to sound unoptimistic, man. It's just literally hard to try to find a flaw in Josh Allen's game. I think the one thing that I would say, I'm not comparing him to Carson Wentz. Let's be very clear here. But
you're going to need to explain yourself here, buddy.
Yeah, I know. As far as pushing himself to try to win the game, by himself, kind of trying to make things happen that aren't there, I see a lot of that with Josh Allen sometimes. And you saw a little bit of that at Wyoming. I talked to Bills fans this summer, bro, and that was something that they talked about, and I never really thought about that. And they said the same thing. I'm not comparing him to Carson Wentz. That is not the case. But as far as trying to make things happen that aren't there sometimes because he thinks that his talent can kind of create, and sometimes it does, certainly does, but that can lead you into mistakes like we saw in the playoffs.
I see it a little bit. The way you framed it at first was it's a good thing of what he does. One of Carson Wentz's best qualities was making things happen that aren't there, and that you see that in Josh Allen.
Appreciate you clearing that up.
Yeah, I see that it's the bad part of Carson Wentz, of he tries to make things happen that aren't there. And that is kind of what I'm saying with Josh Allen a little bit at the beginning, was there are 2 or 3 throws a game where he's just trying to force a throw that he thinks that his arm talent can get there, or, he can squeeze it in a tight window. Exactly. Or even, sometimes in the rushing, dude, get down. You do not need to take that hit, try to run over that linebacker when you are getting paid as much as you are and this team relies on you as much as they do. Just run out of bounds. and those like a couple decisions a game that happens, but it's because when those decisions work out, that's why he's here. That's why he's in the top of the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they got their franchise QB. There's no question about that, and they'll be set for many years to come. All right, so let's move on from the quarterback position and let's dive into another group that we have ranked pretty high, and it's the playmakers for this Buffalo Bills team. And going into 2023, we've got them ranking out at 12th among playmaker groups in the NFL, and it starts with none other than the dude, former Terp, Stephon Diggs, who's become one of the best wide receivers in football, and it's not much else to say besides that. I mean, he commanded so many targets and catches this year and decided not to show up to the beginning of camp because he wasn't being targeted enough, but he was literally being targeted at an historic rate. And if he can see more targets, like I heard on a podcast the other day, I love squeaky wheel wide receivers. Like, this is not me talking, this is the guy, but like, he loves squeaky wheel wide receivers because when they complain, they get what they want. And it's like, if it's Stephon Diggs, he's definitely going to get what he wants. And he's probably definitely going to see that target share. They don't have a choice. He's going to help them win a Super Bowl. So, yeah, big things coming for Stephon this year. Gabe Davis on the other side. And disappointing season last year, man. We were expecting a big breakout in his sophomore season. Obviously, everybody remembers that AFC Championship game when he went for 4 touchdowns, I believe, maybe even 4 touchdowns. But he had one of the best receiving games in an AFC Championship game that we've ever seen, and we thought that that would carry into last season. It did not, but nonetheless, Gabe Davis was still the clear wide receiver 2 on this team, and nobody's come in to replace him with that position. So they're rocking the same thing going into 2023. They brought in Trent Sherfield, got him at the slot wide receiver position. James Cook coming out of the backfield. They also did sign Damian Harris out of New England. It's kind of a matter of debate whether or not one of the, like, I don't know if it's going to be a committee. I don't know if one of these guys runs away with this job. I think I'm leaning more committee. James Cook in the pass game, Damian Harris on the ground and the goal line work. They saw, like, you got to give Damian Harris his credit. I mean, Buffalo got absolutely trounced by Damian Harris in the past, and they were like, you know what? He's a really good guy. Let's bring him in. So they obviously like him a lot. I think he's going to see a lot more work than people think. And then you still got Dawson Knox there at the tight end position, but they did in the first round take tight end out of Utah, Mr. Dalton Kincaid, who could be a serious threat. There's talks that he might even line up in the slot this year. But what do you see happening with this playmaker group in 2023?
Yeah, I mean, we have it at 12. It's definitely heavily weighted on the shoulders of Stephon Diggs. You know, he does often get left out of the conversations with Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Devontae Adams, and I think he's right in that tier with those guys, especially when he's on. You know, he's never failed to produce since he's gotten to Buffalo. Like, he's also really never been injured either. Like, it's one of the main things. He has health over all these guys, except for maybe, excuse me, Justin Jefferson, who also never really gets hurt. But the rest of the group, you've got your concerns for sure. Gabe Davis, look, I was not high on Gabe Davis last year. I felt like that the hype was all following that playoff game, and there's no way he would be able to live up to that. He didn't.
Damn, dude.
I know,
dude.
Dude.
Getting choked up talking about Gabe
there.
Davis's disappointment season, bro. I'm choked up about it too, man.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't.
A lot of Gabe Davis
I think I had Gabe Davis for maybe 2 weeks last year. I mean, our league players get traded around all the time, so it's not, you know, super unusual to have a guy for only 2 weeks and move him off. But he was dealing with a sprained ankle last year that came out this off season that, you know, nobody really knew about. Like, it wasn't like he was never questionable or anything like that. He was always in the starting lineup, but was nursing that sprained ankle all year, and I think that could have definitely contributed to his dip in production or his dip from what was expected of him. And maybe we do see a bounce back here for him, a little bit of post-hype buying for Gabe Davis, maybe, if you believe that. I don't think I have any shares of him, but maybe if I can get him on the cheap, I would be interested in that. As far as the slot wide receiver goes, it is Trent Sherfield right now, who made some plays in Miami last year and some plays in San Francisco the year before that. I do think that there's a world where Khalil Shakir takes this job. He did play primarily in the slot, and it was not a huge disparity between the slot and out wide, but I do think that he can play the slot for them. And when he played last year, he definitely wasn't bad. He's a younger guy, younger option. We'll just kind of see who ends up winning that spot, but I definitely think he's going to give him a run for his money, even though he's technically back up to Stephon Diggs at this point in time. The running back room, I definitely hear what you're saying. I think it could very well be Damian Harris on first down, and then James Cook on second and third downs, maybe like obvious run situations like second and short for Damian Harris. But other than that, I do think that James Cook probably has a 60% snap share here. With Damian Harris kind of spelling him a little bit more, but James Cook going to be getting a lot of the passing work. Damian Harris never really was a pass catcher in New England. Then at tight end, that's where things kind of get interesting, because you do have Dawson Knox still here, who they did give a contract. I talked about it a little bit with Dalton Schultz. I don't think there's anything special about Dawson Knox. I think he's a good player. I think he's a good tight end. I think if you plug 8 to 10 other tight ends in this spot for Dawson Knox, you're getting a lot of the same thing. And I think the Bills know that when they drafted Dalton Kincaid, because Dalton Kincaid is a special player. He is an elite route runner at the tight end position, or can be an elite route runner at the tight end position. Is a very good athlete, very good speed. Problem is, he's not really a tight end. He cannot block. That is one thing. Dawson Knox isn't a fantastic blocker, but he's going to be better than Dalton Kincaid. And I talked about that slot wide receiver role. If, Trent Sherfield or Khalil Shakir don't look like they're taking that job, there have been some rumblings that Dalton Kincaid could end up taking that job as the slot wide receiver. And he fits that role maybe, honestly, a little bit better than the tight end role that he's currently slated at. If you're talking fantasy, I think Dalton Kincaid loses value if he goes to slot wide receiver, honestly. If he officially becomes a wide receiver, because then he is the wide receiver 3 versus being a tight end and getting that production. If he's a tight end that plays in the slot like Kyle Pitts, it's not as a player, it's the fact that he's changing positions. If his player label is at wide receiver, he becomes much less of an asset, in at least for fantasy purposes. But if he's, a tight end that happens to play in the slot a lot, I think you're talking about a really good tight end here. Rookie tight ends usually don't perform very well, but we could see some solid production from him, especially if he's playing in the slot. And it might take a little bit, but very well could happen.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there has been a lot of talk about putting Kincaid into that slot position. We'll see. I mean, he definitely has the talent to do so and to make it work efficiently. So that'll be exciting to see. I think Khalil Shakir definitely has a chance to step in there. It was Isaiah McKenzie last year, and we thought that Isaiah McKenzie was going to have a really solid opportunity, and he just had some drops. He really wasn't looking like a trusted guy in that slot position. And then they moved Khalil Shakir over there as they came towards the end of the year last season, and he made some nice plays, but they brought in Trent Sherfield, they brought in Kincaid. So I don't know. There's something about Shakir that they don't love. I think that I've seen that he's doing some special teams work now. I mean, he's prolific at Boise State. So if he can carry some of that success over to Buffalo, he should be pretty fucking good. But hasn't translated yet. But he's going to his sophomore year, sophomore breakout. Could be in the plans for Khalil Shakir. And before we move on from the playmakers, just wanted to mention, because I mentioned how Damian Harris ran all over Buffalo when he played them. And he, in fact, did. He played 4 games against Buffalo in his career. 3 of those games, he went up over 100 yards. He scored 4 total touchdowns. 10 yards to carry, 6 yards to carry, 6 yards to carry. Dude, he was an absolute monster against this team. They remembered, and they brought him in the offseason. So I think he's going to be used a lot this season. So, all right. Let's move on from the playmakers of the Buffalo Bills, and let's dive into this offensive line unit, which we mentioned isn't up to snuff with the rest of this team probably, but maybe you don't necessarily need it, because you got Josh Allen. So let's dive in. You got Deion Dawkins still playing tackle for them. You got Michael Morse. No, not Michael Morse. Mitch Morse at the center position. Michael Morse used to play for the Orioles. Not quite the sport that we're talking about here. Connor McGovern at guard. You got Osiris Torrance at the other guard position, and that's a guy I'm kind of excited about. I mean, there was there was some comms of the Commanders taking him at some point. I mean, he was going to be an offensive lineman that fell in the draft. He used to be scout like. Well, I've been talking so much about like a year before the draft. Oh, like Osiris Torrance a year before the draft was a premier prospect heading in. Definitely fell in the draft process, but they grab him. Probably going to start him at guard. But I mean, it's not a terrible group. I mean, where do you see the signs of weakness coming from the O line?
Well, the signs of weakness right now are kind of everywhere. Like Deion Dawkins is probably your best lineman here, and again, I'm
Yep.
trying to be a little bit more optimistic with these episodes.
I felt like I was just pretty optimistic, to be
Yes, you
honest.
were.
Not to pat my back or anything, but yeah, go ahead.
But fact of the matter is, we have him at 28th, and I don't really know if there's too many fans that would have them much higher than that. I mean, there's you don't have an above average player on this line. I think Deion Dawkins is an average starting tackle in the NFL. That's about all you're going to get from him. Mitch Morse getting a little up there in age, still didn't even grade out very well last year. Spencer Brown graded out towards the bottom of the NFL for tackles. Connor McGovern, bet you didn't know this, not one, but there are two Connor McGoverns. I had to like do a triple take when I was putting.
I know, man. Me too.
When I was going through and doing some research for this. Two Connor McGoverns that play on the interior offensive line in the same division.
But one of them has a handlebar mustache. One of them does not.
That is the one thing. And it's also both spelled the same because there's a lot of different ways you can spell Connor. You can go two N's. You can go E instead of O. There's a lot of different things you can do there, but they happen to be spelled exactly the same. And McGovern, I don't know if I've ever known another McGovern than these two Connor McGoverns. So,
Nope.
Very interesting thing there. He also graded out towards the bottom of the league, was the worst of the two Connor McGoverns, unfortunately. But we are going to finish on a happy note because Osiris Torrance I liked a lot. I thought was a first-round player for sure. Had put together great tape. Depending on what you think of Peter Skoronski and if he's a guard or not, was the number one guard in this class, I think, pretty easily. Wasn't the first guard taken, to my surprise. Steve Avila and I believe another guard went in front of him. But he was phenomenal, specifically in run blocking. He is going to really pave the way. I mean, he might step in here and be the best run blocker on this team right away. There's a real shot of that happening. I think that Osiris Torrance, it's hard to say that he would jump Deion Dawkins, who, like I said, is a starting level tackle in the NFL. But I would not be surprised if Osiris Torrance is a Pro Bowler in 2 to 3 years, especially playing on a good team like this. You get a little bit more publicity than if you were playing somewhere else. But yeah, that's the bright spot. But the problem is, if they don't take Osiris Torrance, you're not looking at this offensive line and going, well, there's optimism. It would have been almost impossible for me to pick a breakout candidate if it wasn't for Osiris Torrance being here. He was the obvious choice, really the only choice. A lot of these guys are veterans, have been in the league for a little bit, haven't seen a whole lot from them since they got into the NFL. And like I mentioned, they've been hesitant or, just maybe straight up haven't invested in this offensive line, at least in the past few years. They went on a run from when they drafted Josh Allen to I believe 2020 or 2021, where they were heavily, heavily investing in the trenches. And, we'll talk about it in a second. It really worked out on the defensive side of the ball. They got a couple really nice pieces there. Really did not work out on the offensive side of the ball. Really couldn't grab anybody that, you feel good about going into any given season, except for Deion Dawkins and hopefully Osiris Torrance. And Mitch Morse, I guess, again, average starting center, but he does grade out at 24th last year, and he's getting up there in age, so I can't expect a better season from him than we saw last year. And 61, not good.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, personally, I'm just happy to receive some affirmation on some O-line analysis for the first time this year. So I'll take that as a win. But let's move on from this offensive line and dive into this front seven. And as we go into this defense, it is one of the best defenses in football right now. And it's supported by this front seven, that's for sure. They got Greg Rousseau coming off the edge, and he's joined by one of the best defensive players of all time, and I don't feel like that's really hard to say at all. Von Miller coming off the edge as well. You got Ed Oliver still coming up the middle. Matt Milano still doing his thing in linebacker, but who are you excited to talk about? They also have some nice background pieces. They got Leonard Floyd coming off the edge if they see an injury, so that Leonard Floyd was really good for the Rams for a little bit. So got to love him. They still got Espinosa. And then I kind of didn't really spit that out how it should. But they still got my boy Tim Settle when they got him from Washington. So they got depth on this front seven as well, which I like a lot.
Yeah, poor fucking Tim Settle, dude. Like, for like 2 or 3 years, was like, get Tim Settle out of Washington because he's not going to play over John Allen and Deron Payne. And he comes here to Buffalo, and immediately he's sat back on the bench. Didn't play very well last season, but his years in Washington, he was great. But he is behind Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones, two very good players. I really liked Ed Oliver coming out of the draft. This was really before I got into the draft, but just a little bit I saw of him, I really liked it. Never really developed as a run stopper. That's kind of what's holding him back. I think if he did develop as a run stopper, he could have fulfilled and been worth that 9th overall pick that they took him with. Doesn't look like it's going to happen at this point. We are headed into year 5 for him. Maybe even it is year 5 because he was a 2019 guy. I'm pretty sure.
Let me look into it. You keep talking.
Yeah, but there's still potential there with him because, like I said, he is one of the better pass rushing defensive tackles, and that's very valuable in the NFL. I mean, we saw that with Javon Hargrave. This past offseason, guys, I mean, Dexter Lawrence isn't exactly a specialist in one or the other. He's just really good at both. But guys like that are going to get paid. Draymond Jones is another example. Really good pass rusher, not a great run defender. There's a world where Ed Oliver is getting $18+ million a year this offseason, and the Bills, with Josh Allen's contract, with Diggs and the guys in the secondary and the guys that are already here, can't afford to pay that. So this may be the last year that you get Ed Oliver here in Buffalo. Did you check the contract situation before I continue to dwell on that?
Yes, I didn't check the contract situation, but he was a 2019 draft pick at 9th overall.
So then I think they did accept his 5th year option, and that's this year. And then after that, they're going to have to make a decision on that. On the edge, you have one of the more underrated edge duos. I think a lot of people forgot about this, even myself included, with Von Miller missing the second half of the season due to injury. People kind of forget that he's here, honestly. Like, it just kind of felt like he won with the Rams. He goes off into retirement, like, that's it. But he's still here. He was still playing really well to start the season. Greg Rousseau on the other side of him, I think is really good. Was a great pick by them in the late first round in 2021. If he can take another step this year, you are talking about one of the elite edge duos in that same conversation as Pittsburgh, as Cleveland, as Dallas. Really elite group, especially with that interior as well. You do have Leonard Floyd here, Tim Settle, Adrian, you have really good depth. Like, this is some of the best depth that you're going to see on the defensive line in the NFL. You still have Matt Milano here, who definitely proved his worth as one of the best linebackers in the NFL. They do let Tremaine Edmonds go to Chicago. He gets a big deal from them. I'm a little excited about Dorian Williams out of Tulane. I think that he could take that spot, that second linebacker spot, but it's really just, this is Matt Milano's spot, really, and all your assets on this front seven outside of Milano are going into that front four, and that's really what you're excited about.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if you do see an injury similar, hopefully not, but like if Von Miller does get banged up like he did last year, I mean, you've got that depth on the edge that you really, I mean, obviously
you're
not
skipping
the
a beat.
same
You are 100% skipping a beat, but not
as hard of a beat as a lot of teams.
Well, that, and the other thing is they don't have to play Von Miller 95% of snaps. They can rotate these guys, keep them all fresh by bringing in a Leonard Floyd, bringing in an Epinesa. I don't know if it's
Espinosa. Or Epa. Yeah, I know. I can't get it off my tongue. I've heard it said 100 times, and I can't. Espinosa. I don't know, bro.
You can rotate
really good
those
football
guys
player.
In. Solid football player. Maybe not worth the second round pick that he was.
He's not Von Miller.
He's no Von Miller. That's also true. But you can keep Von Miller fresh. At this age, you're going to want to maybe not play him as many snaps as you would a few years ago. But you can keep him fresh with this, stable. I mean, we remember seeing that in week 1 last year where they were just like running guys out. Like it was like 4, 5, 6 guys that had really good pressure rates in that first Rams game where they just absolutely dominated the Rams in week 1 on that season opener.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, this defense has been, it kind of gets overshadowed by Josh Allen in the offense, but this defense has been one of the better defenses for the past 3 years, and they've really only gotten better since. So let's dive into the second half of this defense that has been notorious. I mean, this safety duo especially has been so popular for the past 3 years and has continued to dominate. We'll say it is starting to get older, but we still have them coming in at fourth overall upon secondary groups in the NFL. Got to start with Trey White, who's still one of the premier cornerbacks in the league. He's got to prove it on the field more. He's obviously, we've seen it from Trey White, but he's been banged up with injuries, so hopefully he can see a full season this year. He's joined by the rookie from last season, and that's Kaiir Elam, brother of Matt Elam, and I think that's what I got Adrian Amos mixed up with the other day, because Elam was a super high safety draft pick that I thought was going to be good and didn't end up panning out. But nonetheless, I digress. But he
Almost
should be
10
pretty
years apart,
good.
too.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I think they're like cousins or something. I don't know if they're brothers, but because they are like 9 years apart. You keep talking, I'll look that up.
Fair. Okay. But you got Elam there. You got Teron Johnson in the slot cornerback position. And then, as I mentioned, the safety duo has been probably the best safety duo for the past 3 or 4 years. You got Micah Hyde. You got Jordan Poyer. And if anything happens to them, you got the dude who was one of the stories of the NFL last season, and that's Damar Hamlin. So got to love that. But a really solid secondary group. Who are you looking forward to watching this year?
So before we get into this, Matt Elam's brother, Abram Elam, played in the NFL from 2006 to like 2012-ish. And that's Matt Elam's brother. Abram Elam's son is Kaiir Elam. So Matt Elam is Kaiir Elam's uncle.
What?
Yeah. Both went to Florida,
bro.
if I'm not mistaken.
That ages me a little bit.
Both went to Florida.
Good God.
Yeah. It is. That's a little weird. I mean, Elam was a 2013 pick. I think, and Abram came in 2006, so 7 years between them, and then a little bit between there, so kind of all maths out.
When you put it like that, though, it makes me feel really old.
Yeah, it definitely is weird to hear, because like when I first hear that, I'm like, they both went to Florida, they're both last names Elam, probably brothers, but it was almost 10 years ago now. I mean, Kaiir Elam was a 2022 pick, Matt Elam was a 2013 pick, so pretty crazy. Anyway, Kaiir didn't really play very well in his rookie year. Was Christian Benford, who was a 6th round player for them as a rookie last year, was I wouldn't say outplaying him, but they were playing on a similar level, and that's great for Christian Benford, but that's not what you want to see out of Kaiir Elam. Tre'Davious White, I'm still holding on that he can be an elite player in the NFL. That 2020 season was really, really good. I still think he's one of the 15, 18 best corners in the NFL. It's kind of hard to rank him any higher than that with the recent seasons he's had. They haven't been bad, but they haven't been particularly good either. We know how corner fluctuates, goes back and forth between seasons. Maybe this is one of those good years for Tre'Davious White. You also have Teron Johnson here. Just solid slot corner. This is your definition of a middle-of-the-league slot corner. Not bad, not good. Or, not bad, but not going to, win any games for you. Even though...
And Trey White only played in 6 games last year, so he was banged up.
He did miss... And Poyer missed some games, too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And I think Micah Hyde even missed some games.
Micah Hyde missed... only played 100 snaps last year.
Yeah.
So he pretty much... And it was kind of like... It reminded me of the David Bakhtiari situation from the year before, where it was like every week it was like Micah Hyde should be back next week. I remember coming into the podcast and I was like,
Chase Young should be back next week.
Chase Young should be back next week. But like that was like much more like I remember coming to the power rank because I'm like, well, we do have to remember, Micah Hyde's going to be back in like 2 weeks and he never ended up coming back. There was even a lot of rumors this offseason that Jordan Poyer was going to going to Miami at one point. And I don't know how much certainty there was to this, but it felt like it was like a sure thing. Like everybody in the media, it might have been the Jets, but it was somewhere else in the AFC East that he was going to go because he was a free agent. They ended up bringing him back and bringing the safety duo back together because without him, this is definitely not the 4th ranked duo in the NFL or the 4th ranked secondary in the NFL. You also have Damar Hamlin here as well. Glad to see him get back on the field this preseason and into this season as well. It's obviously phenomenal story, has comeback player of the year on lock. But overall, 4th ranked group, you feel really good about this. 4th ranked secondary, 6th ranked front 7, about as good as you're going to get on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, these three names, Trey White, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, I mean, those have been the staples of this Buffalo defense for the years that they've been successful so far. And I mean, they are starting to get older. It's kind of Legion of Boomish, kind of. Not Legion of Boom,
Like
but
Legion
it's
of like Bow,
really
or like
good.
some like
Okay,
some
okay, all
like
right.
less
Crackle, because not Boom. So then you got to think of like smaller
smaller sounds.
onomatopoeias. I think that's what it is.
Legion of
And then,
Onomatopoeia.
okay. The Legion of
Legion,
Onomatopoeia
like
is.
Legion of like Snap, like,
Oh, okay.
or Legion of.
Legion of Whisper. Ooh.
We'll
Okay.
we'll start marketing.
Well,
I'll talk to somebody in the Bills front office, see if we can put that on a T-shirt.
yeah, for sure. Legion of Whisper. Legion of
We'll get Tyler and his
Onomatopoeia.
connections. I'm sure
Yeah, for
he's
sure.
got a T-shirt guy or something.
We'll roll out the marketing brand for this Legion of Boom Part 2. That's like they're all about to retire, and that's the only reason I basically mentioned it. But let's move on into this coaching group for the Buffalo Bills. And we've got them coming in at 17th. I think there's definitely an argument to be made that Sean McDermott belongs a little farther ahead, maybe. But I mean, he's not helped by his offensive coordinator or his defensive coordinator. So
Yeah. His OC, Ken Dorsey could very well be a head coaching candidate if things go well here. Like, he called a really good offense last year. I mean, people forget that you look at like a lot of the advanced numbers, the EPA numbers throughout the regular season last year, they were number one in both of those categories at multiple points throughout last year. I was one of the driving factors in having Sean McDermott a little bit lower than some people may think he deserves to be. But you really look around throughout the NFL, there's a lot of good coaches in the NFL. And when you have Josh Allen, when you have Stephon Diggs, when you have this defense that they've had, you expect a little bit more success than what they've had. I mean, they had one AFC Championship appearance in 2020, haven't gotten there since then, and have never been further than that. And this was a team that last year was the bona fide Super Bowl favorite throughout the NFL, AFC or NFC. They did suffer some injuries, but they still had Josh Allen. They still had Stephon Diggs. Expectations were still super, super high, and they ended up falling in the divisional round of the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think that, quite frankly, I think Sean McDermott has done a good job here, and as he's taken over for defensive coordinator because of Leslie Frazier's retirement, which also was because of a dispute that the two of them had. I'm not in that locker room. I don't think anybody is. The report is that McDermott took over play calling like a year or so ago when the Chiefs had that thing, and the relationship is just frayed ever since then. Who's to really say? But he's now the defensive coordinator here as well as the head coach. I would not be surprised. We talked about it with the Jets. We talked about it with the Browns. We talked about the Chargers, Cowboys. If things don't go well, and for the Bills, I honestly feel like that's like Super Bowl appearance or bust. Quite honestly, maybe even conference championship appearance. If they don't get there, I think McDermott's let go here. I think that they've ran this thing back enough times. They've had Josh Allen playing at a top 2 or 3 quarterback level for 3 seasons now. And the other two guys that are in that conversation with him, and Mahomes and Burrow, both have at least a Super Bowl appearance under their belt. In that time, Mahomes has 2 and a ring. Josh Allen has 0. And it's, I would even be a little bit more understanding if the 13-second call thing happened in the conference championship, like in 2020, but they got embarrassed in 2020. They lost by, I'm pretty sure, 2 scores. And, that heartbreaking, very close loss happened in the divisional round. Who knows what happens if they play Cincinnati in the next round. I just feel like that they might be going in a different direction, maybe a more offensive center direction, especially when you have a quarterback here like Josh Allen. They maybe want to create a more dynamic offense. Maybe it is Ken Dorsey that takes over this job if things go south here for Sean McDermott, because, I mean, I was very surprised.
Do you really think that Dorsey is an upgrade over Sean McDermott?
Maybe not an upgrade, but I mean, we talked about it in the last couple episodes with a couple of these other coaches. It's maybe not what should have happened, but it's probably what's going to happen because, teams, who are they going to blame? Like last year, they kind of pointed at some injuries and they didn't really make a whole lot of upgrades throughout the roster. Like they added their draft picks. They didn't really make a whole lot of free agent signings. They even let Tremaine Edmonds go, whereas the year before they were ultra aggressive going to get Von Miller, and they took Kyrie Elam in the first round. Like that was the year they were pushing all the chips in. They fall short. They fall short again last year, and I honestly just feel like that if they fall short again, they don't have any fingers to like. There's nobody to point fingers at other than the coach. They're not going to trade Josh Allen. There's not really many avenues that you can go. Like you don't have the money to go sign a free agent. You don't have like a top, another team's draft pick or something that you can use to acquire another player. Somebody's got to be to blame here. And fair or unfair, I think it might be Sean McDermott.
And like, I can definitely see that. I mean, crazier things have happened in the NFL. I mean, you kind of, as you mentioned, you look to point fingers after a season is over and it doesn't live up to expectations, especially when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen. I mean, it's understandable, and I could definitely see Sean McDermott out of town after this year. Now, I will say, Josh Allen is young. Like, he's still, even though Burrow and Mahomes have done what they have done, historically, no quarterback has ever done what Patrick Mahomes did and come even close. So it's like that. If he wins one at 27, 28, like that makes sense. Like there's a lot of time left in Josh Allen's career, especially as a quarterback. So if you want to keep stability, keep Sean McDermott there. But I don't know. I don't know.
Again, like I said, fair or unfair, this is a what have you done for me lately league. And if they lose in the divisional round again, like I cannot see them running it back again. After that's kind of what they did last year or this past year was just like, all right, well, we lost. We had a couple guys dinged up, but who walks into the playoffs healthy? Like, and we're just going to run it back again. I can't see the front office doing that again. Like, I don't think that they've got to make, I don't think Josh Allen's going to ask out or anything like that, but I just feel like somebody is going to, catch the falling sword, and it's going to have to be Sean McDermott because there's nobody else to really point it at.
Yeah, for sure. And then, like, it would suck, but then you could start to have that conversation. I know he wasn't there last year, but, like, you could start to throw a lot of the success that the Bills have seen maybe on Brian Daboll, and then maybe you start to drift away from Sean McDermott.
Dorsey, like, wasn't a huge step down. I mean, he came in and implemented a game plan that worked well. It wasn't as good as Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll, we have him as after year one in New York, maybe a little bit too high, but we do have them at 6th. And, it's kind of hard to replace that with another. You can't find that guy as a coordinator twice in a row. Like, it's very rare to see lightning strike twice like that, but it's not like it's been a disaster. This hasn't been a, Matt Canada experiment here with Ken Dorsey. Like, he has been a more than serviceable offensive play caller.
Yeah, for sure. Got to agree there. But all right, let's move on from the coaching staff and let's dive into headed into 2023. And as far as the colorfulness goes, definitely pretty colorful. I mean, I feel like the varyingness of colors, like I think you start to get light towards the middle and it's like reddish orange, and then you go like back towards your blues toward the end. So I think that's throwing me off a little bit. But this is the 7th hardest schedule in the National Football League, according to Strength of Schedule. We got their over-under rated at 10.5. Vegas does. We don't put those over-unders together. But, gosh, man. I mean, it's a really nice beginning of the schedule, bro. I mean, first 8 weeks of the season, you play the Giants, you play the Dolphins. The Jags might give you some comp, but besides that, I feel pretty good about the first 8 weeks of the season for Buffalo. And then, God, you play Cincy, and then you play Denver. Yeah, bro.
Jets,
wow.
Eagles, bye week, Chiefs, Cowboys, Chargers, Patriots, Dolphins.
It's a very hard stretch.
If they walk out of that above 500, you're happy if you're Buffalo. Also, sorry if I didn't transition quick enough. I accidentally set off my Siri, and then when I was talking, thought that I wanted to play Shot Caller by French Montana. So that started playing in my ear while I was trying to talk, and it may have cut out my audio, and I didn't hear you transition over to the schedule. So you're a little late. You're like sitting there talking about the Blues, and I've still got the secondary up, but that's okay.
They can see it now, man. That's what matters. But I think, god damn, dude, that is a really tough end of the season for them. If they start out hot, they can build upon that. I'm going to go the over. I mean, this is the Buffalo Bills, and it is Josh Allen. It is Stephon Diggs. It is Von Miller. Like, this is a team, they'll make the playoffs, and if they're going to make the playoffs, they're probably going to catch more than 10.5 wins.
Yeah, as long as everybody stays healthy, I think they do clear this number. No guarantees that they're going to win the division, especially with the division they're in. We had the Dolphins at 8th. We had the Jets at 9th. We have them at 6th. So it's very clear that this is one of the most top-heavy divisions in football. But I think they clear it. If it was 11.5, I probably am going under. But I think they can get to 11 wins, even with a pretty tough strength of schedule. But let me tell you, they better start hot. Like you've got to start.
They have to.
I'm talking maybe 4 or 5-0, at least 5-1 heading into week 7 against New England,
which they're set up to do. That is definitely in the script for this year. I mean, that first 8 weeks of the season is not tough, You play the Eagles in week 12, you play the Bengals in week 9, but besides that, you play the Jets twice. Really, before your bye in week 13, you're not facing that tough competition. But you better come out of that bye locked in to face the Chiefs.
Cowboys, I know that the bye's there, and that's nice that they get the bye, right as they're, they get a few games of that rough sweat stretch, and then they get the bye, and then they have to go to Kansas City right out of that bye. Jesus Christ, they get the 2 reigning Super Bowl teams on the road with a bye sandwiched in between. They have to go to Philly, bye week, go to Kansas City. That's pretty rough. But that's why I'm saying, they better start out, you better be heading, let's say you need to head into Cincinnati at least 6-2. Because if they go 500 in that stretch of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games, if they go 4-5 in those games, you're going under this line. And in this AFC, you're in danger of missing the playoffs. So, Jets, Dolphins are the 2 that I would point at and be those could be losses. But the Bills have had those games. They had one or 2 of those games last year. They had a couple of them the year before where they just everybody's looking around what the hell is going on here? Why are they playing as well as they could be? I think the Giants could catch them by surprise. I think the Jags could catch them by surprise. New England, if you slip up, or let's say they suffer some early season injuries and they're walking into Cincinnati at 4-4 or 5-3, you're really concerned about the outlook for this team, even just getting into the playoffs, much less winning the division.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, out of the top 10 teams that we have in our power ranks, the Bills are probably, I don't know, I don't want to say concerning, but
no, because I think that, so in my mind, the number 6 up to the Bills, we took a tier gap up. I feel there's less concerns with the Chargers, or there's less concerns with the Bills than there are with the Chargers. I just feel the Bills don't have the dumb shit happen to them like the Chargers do, and the Dolphins have already had with a Jalen Ramsey, or the Jets tend to do, and the Browns tend to do, and the Cowboys tend to happen. All those teams, while they're good teams, and if you wanted to really break it down roster piece by roster piece, you could make an argument that they're right in the same level as the Bills. But quite frankly, it's just a gut feeling thing, and the tier gap happens right now to teams with legit Super Bowl borderline expectations. From these teams, from the Bills on up for the rest of the way, it's kind of Super Bowl or bust for these teams. And like I said, if you're heading into that game in week 9 at Cincinnati and you're sitting at 5-3, you're in jeopardy of maybe even missing the playoffs unless you go on a crazy run to finish the year going through an absolute gauntlet of a schedule.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be an interesting road to the playoffs for the Buffalo Bills, but can't wait to watch it, man. We got them ranked at 6. They could definitely do it, but it remains to be seen what the Buffalo Bills do in 2023. But let's dive into this rankings segment or group. No.
A ranking segment.
Yeah, a ranking segment. Yeah.
You probably said that 15 times throughout the course of these power rankings, but today you were I want
to try something new today.
Yeah, it doesn't sound right. Yeah.
We're trying to rename the Legion of Boom. It's a funky episode. But let's dive into this ranking slide to wrap it all up. As we said, we got them coming in at 6th overall in the power ranks. Offense comes in at 5th among the Blitz Pod consensus. The defense sits at the same rank, comes in at 5th among the Blitz Pod consensus. And we've got the window is open, but as we've discussed, it's starting to close fast. I understand that. I will say, like, Josh Allen's still young, so, like, as long as you have Josh Allen, this window is going to be open. So, but what's your explanation?
So, and I might, we haven't posted this on Instagram yet, so maybe, go check it out on Instagram because I may have changed it. I may change it to just closing, because, we were putting the championship window for another team together, and I was like, well, they're probably closing as well. But, you say that Josh Allen is only, 26, 27, but then you look at the other pillars on this roster. Stephon Diggs entering his age 30 season. Von Miller, I believe, is heading into his age 32 or 33 season. Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde are both about to enter their 30s. Trey White, we haven't seen elite level play from him for 2 or 3 years now, and corners don't really age well typically. And you're now looking around, and if those guys start to age out, you may have to flip this roster completely over. And
that's a good
Josh
point.
Allen's great, and if Josh Allen's, they can maybe flip this thing back around before he turns 30. But if they don't get it this year, and those guys like maybe start to show their age during the regular season, and that's why they don't get there, and you're looking around and you might have to flip this roster upside down. That's usually a 2 to 3 year process, even if you're building around a franchise quarterback to, the offensive line is still a extreme work in progress here. Not to mention, we talked about it with the weaponry, that it's very heavily carried by Stephon Diggs. If Stephon Diggs isn't Stephon Diggs 2 years from now, we're talking about a much lower ranked offense. And the defense is built a lot on veterans. They have kind of not been doing too great on their last few draft picks. Kyer Elam, Greg Rousseau, I think was still a good pick, but we haven't seen him be as productive as he was with Von Miller, without Von Miller. And you look around the rest of the defense, it's not a whole lot of homegrown talent that they've drafted recently to prove that they can build this thing to be a really top level defense. And if they fill out 5th offense, 5th defense, are we certain that they're going to make a Super Bowl appearance? That may not even be a possibility. And 5th defense,
it's a possibility.
Well, yeah, I know, but I'm saying, like, in this AFC, we still have 3 teams left in front of them. Like, there's a world where it doesn't happen, and if it doesn't happen, I can't see them ranking higher than 5th next year because of the age of this, because of the age of the defense. And if you can't do it with the 5th ranked offense and the 5th ranked defense, then when the defense gets older and gets worse, you're getting really concerned. Now, we're going to say it, we're going to do it. This was the biggest discrepancy from what 3 of us had to what another person had among the overall rankings with any team. If we look at the overall rankings, you give me 1 second. I had the Bills at 6th, or no, I had them at 5th. So I had them, right where they are. You had them at 6th. Mitchell had them at 3rd.
Tell me why for a second I thought it might have been me. I was like, am I the one that's like, because I've been so far on a lot of things.
Do you know what this is? Do you know what I'm about to say?
Is it Tyler? It's got to be Tyler.
Well, it's Tyler. Tyler has them at 15th.
Oh, word.
Part of me wanted to tell you, take a day off. I'm going to get Tyler for this episode. And we're going to make millions. But didn't work out. Teams
and we didn't make millions on the Cowboys.
And we did not make millions. Yeah. No millions were made, unfortunately. Teams that he has behind or in front of the Bills, he has the Seahawks, Vikings, Giants, Jags, Cowboys, Chargers, Ravens, Browns, Jets, 49ers, Dolphins, a bunch of teams like that. He did say that he had a very similar gut feeling with Denver last year. And you know what? If you've got a team like that, I ignored my gut feeling with Denver last year as well. And it cost me. Didn't cost me, but I was wrong to do that. So if he's riding with his gut here and he just thinks that there's going to be a big fall off here in Buffalo,
But the situations aren't at all the same. At
Yeah.
all.
No. And
Zero.
like I mentioned a couple episodes ago, like the situation's kind of similar with New York and Denver. You have a head coach who's been here for 3 or 4 years. You have a quarterback who's been here in the system for he's going into year 6 now with this team. One good wide receiver connection that has proved to work. The offensive line is not good, but the defense in Buffalo still significantly better than what Denver was running out last year and this year as well. We'll see. If he's right, he's going to take the biggest victory lap that we may have had in the history of the Blitz podcast. And I hope that a lot of people see this. I wish we maybe brought this up at the beginning, so then people would be like, what the fuck is this? But, all the people that stuck
Those
around
who stuck around
end,
till the end.
You're going to leave a comment because you're going to be like, why is Tyler employed?
Yeah.
But, yeah, just wanted to bring that up because I felt like it was too good not to bring up. Because, like I said, that was easily, if you do 5, 6, 3, you're coming out about an average ranking of 5th, maybe 4th, depending on where the other teams are at. And they still rank 6th here, even with Tyler putting them at 15th, just because they were a little bit ahead of a couple teams below them, like in the average. But yeah, dragged them down a good bit because of that.
There's if anybody wants to argue that the Bills should be top 5, no question, I'm sure that we're going to get those comments. I hear you. I totally hear you. But, there's definitely the arguments against. I can hear those as well.
And I think, I had them at 5th, like I said. You had them at 6th. I think 6th is absolutely a fair ranking. For this team, there are some legit questions about what their ceiling
I think
is.
the vibe is bad too. That's a big thing.
The vibe is bad. The roster's good. The players are good. The quarterback's good. I'd even argue that the coach is good, despite what we had them ranked at. But the vibe in Buffalo, not good. Because
and you know what? With Tyler,
they just keep running it back.
The vibe was not good in Denver last year,
and he picked that up.
Okay, I can understand that. Don't agree, but I can totally understand where he's coming from. But all right, man. Well, that just about does it for our 6th ranked Buffalo Bills power rankings episode. And oh my God, I'm going to start crying as I'm about to say we're about to roll through our last 5 teams on the power ranking segment. Been doing it all summer.
Leave a comment. Teams that are left in alphabetical order, so I don't give anything away. And make sure, 49ers, Bengals, Chiefs, Eagles, Ravens. That's your top 5. Leave a comment. Let us know who you think is going to be number 5. You've probably only got about a day to do so. So don't be like, well, I might comment. Comment immediately because you don't want to look like a liar. That's the last thing.
Exactly. And we will accuse you of being a liar live on the Blitz podcast.
I will.
We call people out.
Receipts. We will. He calls out Walter at least once an episode.
Luckily, I've been able to avoid calling out Walter, and I've seen that Walter has not watched the last few episodes to come back. Please come back, Walter. I love you, man. You can shit on me all day. It's fine as long as you're watching the episode.
For those of you returning from the Chargers episode, far and away our best episode to this point. Pretty close to doubling our entire view count from the channel.
Yes, but let's build upon this.
All the subscribers, all the viewers that are coming back, thank you so much. Literally, jaw dropped yesterday, did a little lap around my room. Could not believe it. But for all the new subscribers here, thank you so much for joining. And we'll hope to keep bringing you good content.
Hell yeah, man. We look forward to it. But we will catch you on the next one. Peace.